Marshall, and I'm a school psychologist with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. I'm here today to talk to you about anxiety, which is one of the most common and most treatable disorders facing our children. Today you will hear from school psychologists and students from across the district. I hope you'll stick with us for the next few minutes as we discuss signs to look for and what to do if you feel like your child may be experiencing symptoms of anxiety.
Signs of anxiety vary in type and intensity depending upon the situation, depending upon the person, depending upon the age. So, Alana, in school, I'm hearing that a lot of kids are feeling anxious. Do you ever get anxious in a school situation, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of the time, specifically with having tests every single day and quizzes every single day and having loads of homework every night. And then also just the social environment of school can cause anxiety.
Sure. So when you're feeling anxious, what are you feeling? What are the signs and things that you feel when you're feeling anxious?
Oftentimes I get jittery and I can feel my heart racing, and that's basically it, I guess.
Yeah, I hear some people get sweaty, they get headaches. Sometimes children are talking about tests and they're getting so anxious that they get kind of foggy brain and they can't think it through clearly. Anything like that ever happen to you?
I often close myself off from other people when I get anxious, and I don't want to talk because I feel like I need to focus on what I'm focused on.
Sure. And then so oftentimes I would then think that people may perceive that you're feeling or thinking something differently than you really are, and you're feeling anxious, and they may think you're closing off for other reasons. I think that's important to note that a lot of times students are feeling that they're anxious, but you don't perceive it in others. So it's really important to know that anxiety is a very common thing in children and teens today, and it'll be really important to recognize these symptoms and be able to ask for help when it's interfering with what's going on in your school day.
And go.
I'm sure we all can say that we felt anxious more than once in our lives. For the most part, all of us experience anxiety at some point in our lives, but most of us can cope with it well. Normal anxiety is reasonable, productive, and manageable. When looking at your child's anxious behaviors, ask yourself, is it reasonable? Is the level of anxiety reasonable based on the situation and the triggers involved? You should also ask yourself, is it productive? Does the anxiety lead to a positive action or an outcome? Also, you can ask yourself, is it manageable? Is my child managing this anxiety in helpful ways, or is it becoming too much for them to handle? Excessive anxiety is detrimental, uncontrollable, and paralyzing. Are the anxious behaviors harmful and hurtful to your child? Does the anxiety appear to be at a level that's out of control for them? Is the anxiety preventing them from performing or doing their best in the world? A little anxiety can motivate you, protect you, and even improve you. Too much anxiety can cause distress and interfere with your life's functioning. When a child's overall ability to function is impaired, counseling or other services may be needed.
So over the years, apparently you've gained some strategies and you've learned some strategies to deal with your anxiety. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Probably the biggest one is exercise. Even if it's just going out for a walk, I try every single day to go out, maybe just a 30-minute walk, and being outside too, and just being in nature. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it really is helpful just to be outside, to clear your head, to not be thinking about homework, or I have a test tomorrow. To just be outside, focus on trees, the sky, anything like that really helps me.
Absolutely. Do you think that you've learned different, as you've gotten older, have your strategies changed at all?
They've changed. I've adapted to different ones. I've learned which ones worked more or worked less.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, exercise was something that I kind of underestimated at the beginning, and then I really started to take more action toward it, and I do it every single day now.
Very good. What about if you were in a situation where you couldn't get some exercise, but you started to feel the anxiety coming on, like in a classroom or something? What do you suggest?
First thing I always do is come back to my breathing. I just take a deep breath, and that's what a lot of people tell you to do, but if you really focus on it and try to focus on your breath, it really helps. So you take a deep breath, and then just keep focus on your breathing, because that's the most important thing at that moment is your breathing.
And there's a physiological response to that that absolutely brings you down and centers you. Thank you very much.
So some anxiety, as we've been talking, is perfectly normal, and our body actually has a very natural fight or flight response. So sometimes when anxiety is starting, I often talk to parents and students about it being this roller coaster. And so if we think of that, we're riding up this roller coaster and we can feel our body becoming anxious. Our heart starts beating, our stomach feels jittery, and then we want to avoid the thing that's making us afraid. So that's when our own natural fight or flight instinct kind of kicks in. That's there for safety reasons. If it's a true safety issue, we want to avoid or get away. However, in some of our anxiety disorders, that same fight or flight system continues in our body. We get to a peak anxiety, and what sometimes happens is we remove the thing that's causing us anxiety, and we escape, and then our feelings go away. What then happens is inadvertently we have created this cycle of, to avoid the situation, to avoid that anxiety feeling, I need to avoid the situation, I need to escape it. So for school anxiety, sometimes what happens is our kids pitch a fit about coming to school. We take them away from the anxiety, you can stay home today, the anxiety feeling goes away, and we have developed this pattern of escape. So when working with students with anxiety, what we really need to do is we need to ride the worry hill. So again, if we think about this in terms of a roller coaster, when we get to that peak anxiety, the top of the hill, go ahead and do some strategies to calm your body and ride that roller coaster all the way down. The student will quickly learn, I didn't need to escape the situation. I'm okay. I'm still here. I survived. That is very empowering. If we keep doing that, keep riding that worry hill, keep riding that roller coaster, our own body will naturally habituate to that feeling. So the next time we see that situation, we got this. We can go in with confidence, and our heart won't race as much. Our body won't feel as stressed. If we continue to ride it, we will beat that anxiety-producing event. And that can be extremely empowering for our students.
There's certain times when your kids may become a little anxious, and sometimes you just need a one-liner or something to help get them into that calming position or that calming mode. So I'm going to give you some one-liners you can use with your kids. One is, can you draw it? Like if they become upset, you can say it's good for them to be creative and just kind of get that out, kind of get a release by drawing or doodling. Just say, can you draw it? Another thing you can say is, I love you and you're safe. If they're coming to an event or something like that, or a situation where you feel like they're going to lose it, just you can use that. I love you. You're safe. We're going to work through this. I'm with you. I'm going to be and always have a calm face and a calming approach, because sometimes parents they see their kids getting upset and they have this face like of worry, but you always want to put on that calm front so they can mirror what you have on your face. This feeling will go away. Let's get comfortable until it does. That's a very good one-liner. Let's count. Let's calm and count. And sometimes if you know your kids know Spanish, say, let's count in Spanish. And they'll start counting. Uno, dos. Close your eyes and picture this. That kind of goes along with sort of like guided imagery, or getting them to picture themselves in another situation, maybe in a comfortable place that they love, at the beach or something like that, or in the mountains, or at grandma's, something like that. Another thing you can say to them is, one thing you can do is have a checklist of calming down things that they can use at different times. If you have that checklist with you and give them the checklist, then they can refer back to it and look at ways that they can calm down. Another one, this will be the last one, you are not alone in how you feel. There's other people, and people have anxiety, and it's universal. People have difficulty with certain different kinds of things in their lives. You're not alone, and I'm going to be here with you, and we're going to work through this. We're going to problem solve. We're going to make sure that you're okay.
So some of the things that we know when we're working with students with anxiety is that our thoughts and feelings and behavior are all really connected. If you think of it as a triangle, then our thoughts control our feelings and then control our actions. So with anxiety, one of the quick tips that we can do as parents is what's called a channel changer. I like to use this analogy because it really fits for students from elementary school all the way up to high school. Our younger students can really get this concept as well. So if we think of a channel changer and you're watching TV and you see something you don't like anymore, you're either bored by it or it scares you or it's a program you just don't have any interest in, you can change the channel. Our thoughts often work the same way. So in thinking about this, when we have a thought and it produces a feeling of anxiety, we want to teach kids how to change their channel to a thought that is more calming. I have an example. So let's pretend we're laying in our bed at night and we hear a noise at the window. Our automatic thought could possibly be, oh my gosh, it's a burglar. Obviously that's going to incite emotion and our heart will start racing and we'll start feeling really, really nervous about that and we feel scared. However, we can have that same situation, we hear a noise at the window, and we change that feeling, that thought to, oh my gosh, it's just the trees, it's the wind. That evokes a feeling of being calm. The other thing to really point out to our kids is it is a more likely event that it's going to be the wind or trees against the window. The chances that it's a burglar is very, very, very rare. So you can even talk to your kids about probabilities of this. So a channel changer, giving them an exact thought to think or help them, will help keep them calm and they will be able to think more clearly about their next steps.
I'm going to mention several different disorders, but it doesn't mean that if you have some of the symptoms of these different disorders, it doesn't mean that you have a full-fledged disorder. It only becomes a disorder when it keeps you from functioning in your everyday life. So the first type of anxiety disorder is called generalized anxiety disorder. When someone tends to be extremely hard on themselves, they strive for perfection, and they're constantly seeking approval from others or looking for reassurance. And we all do that to a certain degree, but it's when it's constant and it interferes with your daily functioning that it would be classified as a disorder. Another disorder is panic disorder. And this would involve at least 2 unexpected panic attacks or anxiety attacks that come on suddenly, and then the child worries incessantly about it for at least a whole month. So it's very pronounced. We all get worried and have a little bit of anxiety, but it doesn't necessarily fit under a disorder. Another type of common anxiety disorder is separation anxiety. And we see this when it's very hard for the child to leave home or to leave a particular family member. There may be excessive anxiety when they're away from home or extreme homesickness. They may worry very much about their parent when they're, for instance, at school and they worry about something terrible happening to their parents, or they just have always a vague sense that something terrible is going to happen. School refusal also falls under this separation anxiety disorder. Another type of disorder is called social anxiety disorder, where the child may have a real social phobia. So they have a fear maybe of performance in a particular situation, or a fear of even being called on in the classroom, and they just freeze, they can't talk. A fear of interacting with their peers and starting a conversation with a peer, so much so that they become isolated. So that would all fall under that disorder. Another anxiety disorder is called selective mutism, and this is a refusal to speak when they're, for instance, at school or in public, and yet they may have perfectly normal speech at home. It just becomes difficult when they're at school. Another anxiety disorder is a specific phobia where a child or person may have a real fear of a specific object, like a spider or a dog, or a situation, for instance, thunderstorms or any kind of water storm. They may avoid or react with just crying and tantrums and headaches or stomach aches, and they can't function when they see this specific object or hear that there's a storm coming. And they don't even realize that their fear is irrational. Another common anxiety disorder is obsessive compulsive disorder. And in this disorder, you have a lot of unwanted or intrusive thoughts and that get stuck in your head, and sometimes you can't move on, or there's a tendency to be perfect. They may start a piano piece and they never get to the end of the piece because they made a mistake in the beginning, so they continue over and over again with just the first beginning of the song. Or they have a particular ritual or routine. They may have to tap the table here and then tap the table here before they do something else. So they're very out of the ordinary type of rituals or routines. And again, they interfere in their daily living, and that's what makes it into a disorder. The last anxiety disorder that I'm going to mention is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is commonly referred to as PTSD. And this occurs after an experience or witnessing trauma, a very traumatic event. You have intense fear and anxiety that comes with this, and a lot of emotionality and irritability could follow from this PTSD, so much so that it interferes with your normal activities of life.
So over the last little bit, you've heard some about anxiety, about different signs, different symptoms, about what's normal and what's maybe not quite so normal. You've heard from our students directly. We've given some strategies to you, the parent. But if you do have continuing concerns, you feel that your child is experiencing a level of anxiety that is worrisome for you and also for them, please feel free to reach out to your school. Every school has a school counselor and a school psychologist. Some schools also have school social workers. We are a great resource and we would love to help you. Also, you'll see on your screen a list of different websites, different books, different resources that you can check out for further information as well.